Today's episode is all about hospitality and how to share hospitality with others, how to have people in our home, and all of my tips and tricks on how I have been doing it this last 14 years of my life. Welcome friends, today is another Habits of a Homemaker episode. I'm so excited to share with you guys about hospitality today. It has been a subject that has been on my heart for months and months and months. And really, I see so many women struggle with this so much, whether it's that they do it and they're like stressed out the whole time and they don't know what to do and they don't know really how to do it right to where they're not stressed out and to where they can really enjoy it. And then I also see people who just don't do it because they're fearful of it. They're scared of messing up. They're scared that their friends will say no. They're just so many different fears play into this. And I just want to send you guys a ton of encouragement on this today and give you some really practical tips on how you can make it work for you and your family and the season of life that you're in. Because being hospitable is in the Bible. It is. You should be having people in your home. You should use your home as a place to witness to people, as a place to gather and really create a sense of community and get to know others and just build relationships. It's so important, guys, and it's something that I feel like so many people in this busy world we live in overlook. And it's a true blessing. Even if don't really have the gift of hospitality, like it is one of my top spiritual gifts. But even if it's not one of your gifts, you can learn to be a good hostess and you will be so blessed by this. Like I watched my mom go through this as a child. My dad was a pastor. My mom is not the biggest people person. She learned to be, but she didn't really have that gift of hospitality. She had to learn it because of who my dad was, the ministry that he was in, and because he loved it. My dad loved to have people in the home, and so he was inviting them all the time. Sometimes he wouldn't even tell my mom and they'd just show up. It would always turn out to be a blessing. She would be stressed out about it for a little bit, but she learned ways to make it really work well, and she developed a system, and she really learned how to get things done ahead of time so that she wasn't stressed out, and she really enjoyed the process and enjoyed having people in her home, I think, over the years of doing it for so long. And she passed all of that on to me. Even as a teen, she was giving me the reins and letting me create the menu and do the tablescape and invite whoever I wanted to invite and like control it all. And I remember that being the most fun thing for me. I enjoyed that so much, but I'm just really glad my mom taught me that as a young girl, how to be hospitable. And so I want to share with you guys mostly what my mom shared with me as I grew up in this hospitable home, but it is in the Bible. And so all throughout the Bible, you'll see references to hospitality and having people in your home. In 1 Peter, it says, be hospitable without grumbling. Obviously, there's Jesus. His whole ministry survived off of people being hospitable. He relied fully on people who were hospitable because he was traveling from town to town, and sometimes he didn't even know where he was going to sleep. He didn't know the people he was going to sleep in their home with that night. He just relied on the Holy Spirit to kind of guide him in that. And thank the Lord there were people who were willing to be hospitable, or what would Jesus have done, right? So it is so important because we never know when we might be entertaining an angel in our home. And so I feel like our doors should be open to people and our home should be open, even if it feels chaotic, even if you're like, oh, my home is never going to be Pinterest worthy or it's never going to be perfectly clean. None of that really matters, guys. This is all about just building community and loving on people. That's really all it is about. And we are called to love people. And what better way to love someone, I feel like, is to invite them in our home where we're most vulnerable and where we are most comfortable. And I just feel like that is everything. And it just really shows somebody that you really truly care. So before we get started, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you don't mind. That really helps me so much and I would so appreciate it. So let's talk about some of my top tips. First of all, you may be asking, how do I even start? Well, start small. If you haven't done a lot of hosting before and you're nervous about it, really I would recommend starting small. Maybe just invite a couple over that doesn't even have kids. Like a newly married couple in your church, invite them over. It'll be really low key. They'll be newly married, so they're not expecting anything grand. They don't have kids, so you don't have to worry about the kids messing up things in your house. But that's where I would start. Maybe just start with 2 people. Or if you're feeling a little bit braver, invite a new family that maybe just joined your church and you want to reach out to them and they have kids. Invite them, because I mean, you already have kids, so it's like, what's another, right? And then the next thing you might want to do is decide on a theme. Is it going to be a bonfire, like cook s'mores by the fire, do hot dogs kind of thing? Are you going to have an outdoor movie? Is it going to be like game night? Is it going to be centered around maybe a theme, like maybe you're doing a Super Bowl party, or maybe you're doing a Christmas party? Or you don't even really have to have a theme. You can just say, can you guys come over for dinner? That is what we do the majority of the time. We don't do like these big theme parties. We just say, hey, we'd love to have you guys over for dinner. It's not going to be a big deal. And a lot of times we don't even ask them to bring anything. I'll just make everything, especially if I know they're like a really busy family. Then I hate to ask them to bring something and add more on their plate. But sometimes if I know it's a mom who really loves to cook and things like that, I'll ask her to bring something, or I'll just ask them to bring something simple like a drink. Once you've decided who you want to invite, then you need to ask them. So you can talk to them at church, you can send them a text, but be sure that you give them a little bit of notice. I am really bad about this. I'm a really last minute kind of person when it comes to things like this. And so sometimes I'll just text them 3 days before, 4 days before, and be like, hey, you guys want to come over? But you really want to give people advance notice. So if you can, do like 7 to 10 days ahead of time. The next thing is decide on the food that you want to do. Now, if this is your first time, I would really recommend starting small. Maybe do a charcuterie board. Those are so easy, guys. You just get a little bit of meat, get a little cheese, get a little fruit, get a little veggies, and you just lay it out on the table. You could like literally get some brown paper and just lay it all out on the counter, or just use a really pretty cutting board or serving tray. But that can be super simple. And then just do like a little Coke or Sprite or like a punch or something to go along with it, and people will love that. But if you're not planning to do like a meal, be sure that you let people know that. I always let people know a little bit of what we're gonna have. Sometimes I'll ask them if they're allergic to things, especially if it's something like I'm gonna be making something with peanuts. I'll ask them that. I just kind of try to let them know a little bit of what we're gonna have, so that it is something that they like. And I usually ask them, I'm like, do you guys like lasagna? I'm gonna make that, and just kind of see. But if it's a group that you're inviting, a whole bunch of people, a lot of times it's great to say, hey, I'm gonna be making some soup, so if you guys could just bring some things that'll go along with that, that would be awesome. You could even go as far as to say, I would really love if somebody could bring some bread, if somebody could bring a drink, if somebody could bring a salad, that would be awesome. And then people can respond with what they want to bring. But it really depends on what I'm making, and then I'll just kind of decide if I want people to bring stuff or not. Usually I try to keep it really simple and let everybody just kind of bring what they want to bring. Another really easy option is like a soup and salad night. You could throw that together really easily. Just make a soup the day before and bring it out and put it in your crock pot the next day. And you can ask somebody to bring a salad and do some bread or something like that. You could do pizza. You could just order pizza, or you could make it homemade. You could do like a pizza buffet. Like, there are so many things, fun things that you can do that really don't require a whole lot of like prep or thought, and that are just really simple. Think of a favorite meal that you and your family have that's easy, and just make that. And it really doesn't have to be this big, huge to-do. I think that's where people get so stressed out and end up not even doing it at all, because they just get overwhelmed with all of the food choices and, ooh, what if I have to make everything and all of that? And it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be stressful. Just keep it simple, stick with just like 2 or 3 things, and you'll be golden. The next thing you want to think about when you're pre-planning for your party is, what do you want to do? So sometimes food is just enough. Like, probably 90% of the time that is about all we do, especially if we just have one family over and we don't know them that well, because we want to get to know them. Like, we love sitting and talking to couples and really digging into their heart and like finding out, where did you guys meet? How did you fall in love? Where have you lived? And just all of the different questions. We love to just sit and talk to people and really get to know their heart. But if it's a group, especially if a lot of people already know each other, a lot of times it's really fun to have some kind of game. We love the broom game. And if you've never played it, Google it. It is so funny and it's so good. It's always a really good like icebreaker. So you could also play the game Mafia. That's really fun. You can Google all of these games. But you could do board games, Life, Monopoly. All of those are fun. Phase 10. Any card games, they're always really big hits. You could also maybe say, hey, we're gonna watch a movie outside, or we're gonna have a movie night inside, and y'all could pick like a really fun, like family-friendly movie if there's gonna be kids around, and that's always really fun. We don't really do a whole lot of that because we don't really get to know people really well if you just turn on a movie, but that can be a really fun thing, especially if it's friends that you know really well. You could also do a craft for the kids. Like sometimes I'll host just a little play date in the daytime with some of my other homeschool moms, and we'll invite the kids over, and sometimes we'll do a little craft. Like I like to do themed ones. Like if it's around Easter time, we might paint eggs. If it's Valentine's Day, we might do like little dipped Oreos with like sprinkles on it and things like that. I normally, if I do a craft with kids, I normally do it outside because I don't like to deal with all the mess. So if it's a warmer month, that's usually when I'll pull out the crafts. And also another tip is if it's your first time hosting and you're nervous about all the kids, do it in one of the warmer months where you can do it outside. And that way the kids are playing outside and it's not super overwhelming with all the noise and the goings and comings in the house. Now let's talk about prep. So you want to prepare your home, you want to prepare some of the food, you want to get some things done ahead of time. This is the number one thing that I think most hostesses forget or don't do or whatever, because I think this is what stresses people out the most, is nobody does things ahead of time. So then when it comes to the actual day, you're trying to do every single thing on the day of, and that is crazy exhausting and overwhelming, and no wonder you wouldn't ever want to do it again. So this is my biggest tip. Do as much as you can ahead of time. So probably like 5 to 7 days before everybody comes, get any home projects that you want to do out of the way. Like if we're having just friends we know over, I'm usually not big into this because they don't care, right? Especially if it's like your close friends, they don't care. But if it's like I'm hosting a shower, or like I did Our Lady's Christmas party at church, I hosted that here. Like I want my house to be like sparkling. So in those cases, I would do things like clean the woodwork and dust paddle fans, and maybe I would touch up paint, things like that. But those kind of things you need to do way in advance, like 5 to 7 days. And then probably about 2 days before, I like to get my groceries, because I like to wait a little bit closer to time so that everything is fresh. Especially if I'm serving like a salad or some kind of vegetable, I want it to be really fresh. So wait to do that, but don't wait till the day of. And then the day before is when I usually do most of my cleaning. And I do save some of it for the day of, but the stuff I do the day before are things like decluttering the main areas of the house, wiping cabinets down, dusting the baseboard, wiping off all the sticky fingers off the doorknobs, the handprints off all the walls, sweeping my front porch, kind of giving the main bathroom that everyone will be using a really deep clean. I don't usually do like the toilet and the sink and that kind of stuff until the day of, but I go ahead and get like the floors done, the bathtub, not that anybody's gonna take a bath, but at least it's clean, you know, and like the mirrors and things like that, get that stuff wiped down and just declutter. I just try to make sure all the surface areas are picked up and cleaned up. I usually don't clean the playroom too much. Like I tell the kids to pick it up, but I don't go down there and make sure everything is spick and span, because as soon as all the kids get here, it is a disaster again. So I don't really care about that area of the house. And then I obviously just close the doors to the other parts of the house that I don't really want anybody going in. I usually do leave my bedroom door open, and I clean my bedroom and our master bathroom just in case there's like an emergency with the kids and somebody needs a second bathroom, then they can go into our master bathroom. So I do usually have that available too, if I have time. But there have been times where I have not cleaned clean that room and I just shut the door. So if there are rooms that you don't want people going in, just shut the door. People know, or they should at least know, that if it's a close, and I teach my kids this too, guys. I teach them if you're there at somebody else's house and there's a closed door, that means you don't go into that room. That's very important to teach your kids. Along with being a good hostess is being a good guest too. So you have to learn to be a good guest so that people will invite you back to their house. And then you also want to be a good hostess for people who are going to come to your house. Another thing I do the day before is I prep as much food as I can. And there is actually so much food that you can prep ahead of time. You can do any kind of like potatoes, you can do those ahead of time. You can cut up all your vegetables. Maybe you're going to do a vegetable tray. You could cut up all those vegetables. Any baked goods you can really do the day before. We're having a Super Bowl party here tomorrow, and I went ahead and baked little Rice Krispie treats for the kids. I went ahead and did that today. And if you're serving soup, you could do that ahead of time. If you're doing some kind of dip, you could put it all like in a container, and that way it's all ready to go the next day. Another thing I also like to do the day before, and I don't always have time for this, but especially if I'm hosting like a baby shower or some big event, I'll set out all of my serving dishes the day before just to make sure I have what I need, make sure I know what's going to go in what. I'll even set out the plates and the cups and the napkins and the utensils and get all that kind of organized and set up so I'm not having to stress about that the day of. Another tip that I usually do is when I pull out the serving dishes, I'll go ahead, look through the menu, see what we're gonna have, and I'll put a sticky note on what goes in what dish. Now this is usually only if I'm doing like a big event, but that is really, really helpful so that on the day of you're not like, oh, what was I gonna put in this dish? And what was I gonna put in this dish? It just makes it really easy to remember. You could also do any flower arrangements the day before, any like decorations the day before, and all of that kind of stuff. Now the day of, you want to go ahead and send a text out to your guests to kind of remind them, especially if there's a big group, and just send them your address if they don't already have it, maybe tell them where to park. And this is also when I clean the bathrooms. I clean the toilet really good, and I make sure the kids don't use it. I'm like, don't go in there, it's clean. I'll make sure all the surface areas are wiped down in there. There's a clean towel, there's toilet paper, there's soap in the dispenser. I'll also usually clean all of the floors and be sure everything gets really good and clean and vacuumed. And then the other thing I always do is prepare all of the food before my guests get there. Guys, I feel like this is so overlooked, and people usually are preparing food as people come in, which is fine, I guess. But to me, you can't really visit with the hostess, or at least get her full attention, when she is engrossed in preparing the food. So to me, as a courtesy to my guests, so I can be fully present with my guests, I like to get all the food done, laid out, ready to go, so that when they walk in the door, I am at that door and I'm like, hello, welcome. And they feel really invited and welcomed instead of them coming through my door and having to come find me. So as much as you can, try to get the food prepared ahead of time. And obviously if people are bringing stuff, they may have some things they need to do to set it up when they get there, and that's all fine. But you don't want to be like cooking a pasta dish as people are coming in, because you can't really visit with them then, right? So to each his own. If you have friends, like they're really close friends and you're just gonna cook together and talk and eat, which we have friends that are like that too, then that's maybe an exception. But I really think it is a courtesy to our guests when we are like ready to visit, ready to be present with them and really enjoy them as soon as they get there. Because it's really not all about the food, guys. It is about them. But I will say, if you are planning a party, you do want to have food. I feel like I should have said that in the beginning. A lot of people are like, maybe I'll just have like coffee, and that's fine if you're having like a Bible study or something. But if you have invited people over to your house, they expect food. So you better have food. Even if it's just something simple like popcorn and pretzels, like you could literally do that. But just be sure that you tell them ahead of time so that they know and they're not starving when they get there thinking that they're gonna get dinner. But just be sure you always have some kind of food, because I feel like that is so important. And it is something that guests do expect. Another one of my huge tips is to serve some kind of food that is really easy to prepare ahead of time. So for me, my go-to is always lasagna, because I can make it early in the day and then put it in the oven right before my guests come. So any kind of casseroles like that are always really good ideas. Soups are also really easy to prepare early in the day, and then they're ready when everybody comes through the door. Anything in the crock pot So just think of meals that you can do ahead of time. That way, when your guests get there, you are not having to prepare food while they're there. You're just having to just pull something out of the oven or pull something out of the crock pot. I also love to have an appetizer ready. So if I invite people over for dinner, I love to have some kind of appetizer that they can nibble on until the food is ready. Now, normally it's like ready to go when they walk in the door, but sometimes I will have to pull something out of the oven maybe 15, 20 minutes after they come. And in those cases, I really like to have some kind of appetizer for people to nibble on while they wait on the food. I feel like it's a fun thing to do, and everybody loves a good appetizer. Another thing I do to kind of set the ambiance is I always like to light a candle or turn on my Scentsy warmer or spray some room spray just to kind of make it feel cozy and warm. I like to put some blankets out, like have some soft music playing so that it just kind of sets the tone and makes it feel peaceful and welcoming and inviting when they come through the door. The day of is also when we try to pick up the yard. I usually let my husband and kids handle this part. We pick up the yard, make sure there's not toys everywhere. We kind of will spruce up the front porch, sweep it off, things like that. For the outside of the house, you just want to kind of make the path from where they're going to park to your door pleasing. Like, you don't want it to be a complete disaster where they're having to like jump over toys and step onto balls and things like that to try to get to your door. So as they enter, just be sure that you have a place for them to hang their coats. We have a place right by our door that has lots of pegs where they can hang their coats. We have a bench below that where they can set their purses. But in our homes before this, where we didn't have that, I would just let them sit all that stuff on my bed in my bedroom, and that worked just as well. But just have kind of a little designated area, especially if it's wintertime, where they can put all their coats and boots and hats and all of that. Now, as they come in, we talked about this a minute ago, welcome them. Be so excited that they're there. Be present. This is the time to enjoy your guests. This is not the time to be stressing about the food or cleaning or anything like that, or be in another room with your kids. This is the time to really enjoy your friends and your family, whoever you invited, and just be fully present with them. So as we get ready to eat, I usually have my husband kind of gather everybody in the kitchen, and he will say a prayer, and I will usually tell people like what we have, unless I'm doing like cute little tags and it's a baby shower or something like that. Normally we don't have any kind of tags. I just say, hey, this is chili, this was a spicy one, and then this one's a not so spicy one for the kids. This is this kind of bread, and I just kind of go down the line and kind of share what it is, so that they're not getting there and be like, what is this? And then I also let them know, you guys make yourself at home. You're welcome to eat in the living room. You're welcome to eat wherever. Or could be a time where you say, please don't eat in the living room. Please don't take food to the playroom. We want the kids to eat wherever. We usually put the kids on our balcony, and so we usually tell the kids can eat in the balcony, on the balcony, and the parents can eat in the dining room. But this is a good time to kind of relay any kind of house rules that you have. Maybe go ahead and say, if there's a door closed, that's a room that we don't want you guys to go in. But I feel like you don't really need to say that people usually know that. I usually explain where the restroom is in case anybody needs to use it. Just things like that you may want to just let everybody know while everyone's gathered. We also usually tell the kids, please don't close any of the rooms when you're inside of them, just because you never know what kids are going to do. So we like all the doors to always stay open in the house when we have a lot of kids here. But you will probably come up with your own rules as you host and you figure things out. And things may get crazy sometimes and things not go as planned. That has happened to us a lot of times. People have left and we're like, oh, those kids were crazy, and things like that happen. But you know what? You just got to laugh it off and you learn from it, and just maybe figure out some better rules for next time. Maybe figure out how to cook something different for next time. Maybe you had something that got burned and you felt really bad and you're like, oh, I'm sure everybody left hungry because this was burned. Girl, just don't even worry about it. It is fine. I promise you they enjoyed being there with you and they felt loved that you even invited them. So don't stress about things not going perfectly. I really do think it's more about the thought than really anything else. You thought enough about those friends to invite them, and that is going to minister to their heart more than the soup that you made, more than the bread that you made, more than the toilet that you cleaned. What I will say along the lines of the rules, though, don't have a ton of them, because you don't want your guests to feel like they can't really be themselves in your home and can't really make themselves at home. Obviously, you don't want them to wreck the place either. And it is okay to have rules. But if you lay out like this really long list of rules, they're going to be like, good grief, why do we even come if she didn't really want us here? You know, they're going to feel like that. So that's why we usually just say like one or two little things like, hey, kids, just be sure you guys don't close the doors downstairs. And that's usually about our extent of our rules. And we don't even ask people to take their shoes off at the door. Like, we just try to make them feel as free and at home as possible. And the less rules you have, the more that they will feel like that. Another thing I usually do is I will remove anything that I feel like is a hazard. Like if it's a choking hazard, we don't really have a lot of that stuff around as it is because we have kids. But especially if you're someone who don't have kids, move any little things that could be a choking hazard. You might want to move anything that's breakable that you don't want the kids to touch if you're going to have kids. And I always also remove any toys that are loud or obnoxious or that the kids tend to fight over. I will usually put those in our laundry room. So you may want to think about things like that. All right, guys, I think those are my top tips for you guys on how to host. I really hope that helped you. I feel like they're all really easy things to do. I hope it didn't overwhelm you because really it is about the thought that counts. And I really don't want you guys to stress about this too much because if you will just start doing it, just start by inviting one family, you are going to be so blessed by this. Just implement a few of my tips. Start out with just implementing a few of them, and then as you gain more experience with hosting, you can add more and more. But I'm telling you, if you'll just prep things ahead of time, that in itself is going to cause you so much less stress. And you are going to enjoy this so much. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. To me, it really is like second nature now. Like, I just do things without thinking about it, without preparing a whole lot as far as lists and stuff. I just know what I got to do. And so the more you do it, the easier it's going to be. And the more you do it, the more blessed you're going to feel. I'm telling you, every time we have people over, I'm always so glad we did it. And it's always a blessing to us. It's a blessing to them. And that's part of us being good homemakers, right? Is having people in our home, having it be a place of peace where people can come and enjoy and rest and feel welcome. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure that you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe before you go. And I will see you again really soon in my next video. Bye, guys.